strokes. Holding water, so much you will know about dolphin kicks, flip turns, dives, and how to find an awesome coach. Hosted by Brian Welter and Tyler Kearns. Holding water is where competitive swimming is learned.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to Holding Water, presented by Commit Swimming. Excited you guys could join us for another great week of the show. Brian, what's going on out there in Texas, man?
Yeah, same old, man. We didn't have a meet this weekend. That was a plus. Just cranking right along, basically, and getting ready. We were a week out of most of my top age group kids got to meet this weekend that we're gonna back them up for. So we started resting a couple days ago and looked pretty good today. Hopefully not too good. So we'll see how it goes. But I feel good about it. They've done a good job. So, how you guys doing out there?
We're good. It's state championship week for the high school kids here in Alabama. So we are getting ready for that, and all that entails. Our buddies up in Huntsville are going to be hosting that at their new beautiful pool up there, and we're excited to do that. But right now, man, I'm excited to be back here for another week of the show. Had some great stuff last week.
Mine too, man.
I think we got to start by saying thank you to Commit Swimming for sponsoring our show, for bringing this to everybody weekly. For those of you guys who don't know about Commit Swimming out there, Commit Swimming is a software that helps you manage your team's training and performance. Commit Swimming is trusted by thousands of coaches around the world, elite training centers, NCAA teams, high school swim clubs. 89 different countries are using Commit to write their workouts. When these coaches are asked about their experience with Commit, it is clear their teams change for the better when they start using Commit. So coaches out there, go to commitswimming.com to sign up for your free trial. You'll be blown away by the power and simplicity of Commit. I know Brian and I have been sharing workouts with each other through Commit over the last few weeks and through hosting the show. So it's a great way for you guys that are multi-site teams to communicate with your other coaches. But if you're not and you're an analytical young coach, it's a great way to kind of track what you're doing. And because I think, honestly, I've written everything down for a while, but I think more people need to write things down and evaluate what they do and when they do it in the season to kind of have an idea of, what you really believe in and what you stick to, not just what you say you do. So all of that being said, Brian, you want to tell everybody about our guest today? We got a great one.
Yeah, I do. I'm pretty excited to have this guy on. He's been a pretty important part of my career because he pretty much gave me my first real salary job. When I was a young upcoming coach, I applied for a job and he took a chance on me, and the rest is history. Here we are today. He started out, he was over in Baylor for a while, and then he went to Baton Rouge, was at B-Tech for a while, and then now he's up at New Wave or Wave Swimming. I'd like to bring on John Roy.
Hey,
Welcome,
guys.
John.
Thanks. Hey, thanks for having me. It's a privilege to be here with two guys I consider friends and great coaches and doing a show that I think is about the best thing out there for age group swimming. So I appreciate you guys doing the show and really appreciate you having me on.
Well, John, thanks, man.
We're glad to have you, and it's good to see you, man. It's always fun to talk to you, and I'm sure we're going to have plenty to talk about because I know you and I can talk for days about swimming. And Tyler,
this show is long.
Tyler as well. So, Tyler, you want to introduce the workout segment here, and let's let John talk through one of his practices.
So for you guys that are out there, we haven't seen the show before. We have a weekly a segment every week where our guests bring us a workout that they've done with their team. We call it the main set, and it is brought to you by Commit Swimming. So here we go. We'll check it out. There you go. John, you want to take us through this workout?
Yep. Well, yeah. So normally I coach our silver group, which is sort of 8 to 11-year-olds on the developmental side. But this past Wednesday, I wanted to try to take care of my younger coaches, and one of them wanted to see mom and dad. And So I took our goal group, some of our better 10 to 12-year-olds, and he was sort of looking for me to help them be a little more consistent with training times and practice. So I started that as sort of my basis. Young kids, I just wanted to get them going and get to the work. So we went through a pretty quick 300 kick drill, swim by 50. Never do a board on the kicks in warm up, so no board on those kicks, and just got them, see who I had, get them organized, and then pretty much right into 2050s on a minute, where we went 1 fast, 1 easy, 2 fast, 1 easy, 3 fast, 1 easy, all the way to 5 fast, 1 easy. The fast were supposed to be a 200 pace. They were choice. Most of the kids, because I coach senior obviously as well, and when you give younger kids choice, I think they're going to default to freestyle. So we had a lot of freestyle on that, which I kind of assumed was going to happen, but I wanted to see who might be brave enough to choose some of their other strokes that they're good at, and just get a feel for that. And certainly some of them did. The goal on the fast was to be at 200 pace and be consistent on that. I don't think anybody had an issue at 1 fast, 1 easy, but the goal was really to try and keep that going. So we started out really well, and we got to 5, and really just, I was very vocal and trying to make them be consistent, which is what was the goal presented to me by my assistant coach. And I thought they did a pretty good job with it. That was okay. Now our heart rate's up, and we can talk about doing a little bit longer stuff and trying to hold some paces on the next set. And 8 100s on 140, take your 100, 500 pace, goal pace for that, trying to be +3 or faster and hold it. And just looking back at that, I was super impressed that they did a really good job of being real consistent all the way through that set. There was, I think we had like 21 kids in the practice on the Wednesday night from 6 to 7:30 before Thanksgiving. So I was fairly pleased to see that. And there were certainly a few of them. Okay, we went 101 on the first one. Oops, that might be a little quick. But they settled into a place that was probably faster than they're going to be normally going over the course of 8 100s. Then we took a 200, on 4 minutes, working 25 drill, 25 distance per stroke, with a real big thought process of, you've got 6 100s faster coming up. Use this to set up, feel good, stretch it out, and get ready. We got 4 100s faster going on 150, going and just set it up. And they did. I was super impressed with the ability of this group, and I hadn't worked with them in a couple months because we've been so separate with COVID and everything else. And it's not my normal site. And I was super impressed with the attention to detail and focus they kind of put into doing that. And sometimes when I put those kind of 200, set it up for the next stroke in, I don't get the focus, or you'll have a bunch of kids standing around blowing it off, which usually doesn't have me in a really good mood, but their focus and their detail was really good on that. And it showed on the 4 100s. They were supposed to be on average 2 seconds faster. And that's what I talked to them about, because most of them crushed 500 pace +3 on the first set. So let's get 2 seconds faster and hold it. And they did a really nice job with that. Once again, took the 200 with a purpose and with focus, and the 2 100s on 2 minutes, 500 pace -1 or better. They pretty much crushed that. And there were a couple kids in that group that I after that set, I talked to them, because while they might have been holding their pace like that we were looking for, they were 5 or 6 seconds faster on the last one. And we see that. We all see that as coaches, Sammy Save Up or whatever we want to call it. And just watching them, one particular young man, for most of the set, he's doing a 2-beat kick, and he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, but clearly he could have been better. He gets to the last one, throws in a 6 or 8 beat kick and goes 6 seconds faster. So we had a nice little talk about, the goal was to be consistent all the way through there, and looking for that consistency in their training. There's some really talented kids, but okay, if you're going to go 102 on the last one, I probably didn't need to see 113s on the first heat, on the first set of hundreds, and what can we do, and working with them. And as it turned out, the way the group structure and lanes and pools closed and all that, I got to see him. I wasn't coaching his group, but he was right there, and did a little of the same thing yesterday at morning practice. And it was my assistant coach kind of made almost the exact same comments, and I love when that happens. So really just trying to get the kids into that mindset of, here's the level I need to be training at. And I thought they did a pretty nice job on that set. The next one I had time, and this is more, as the head coach for the program, I look at what are some of our weaknesses, and I try to talk with my assistant coaches and my age group coaches, and what are some of our weaknesses. And I feel like when I get kids to the senior level, their ability to train non-freestyle strokes is not as good as it should be. And I don't know that that's necessarily uncommon to us. I think that's a fairly standard thing. I've seen it with other teams, and something I'm talking with my staff about. So I just thought I'd see, and I have a huge firm belief of the importance of being a good kicker and to being a good swimmer. So we did a 200 kick on 4 minutes. This was all your Backstroke, no freestyle. 200 kick on 4 minutes. And this might have been where I got a little aggressive, because there was a butterflyer in there, and he wanted to go backstroke, and I said, no, you're a butterflyer. He's not a very good butterfly kicker, so he got behind on the 200 kick on 4 minutes. But I'll give that young man a lot of credit, because never stopped, kept fighting. The swims helped him get back. And I looked at him at the end of the set. I go, man, if your kick could match your ability to pull on butterfly, it'd be really kind of dangerous. And he kind of, it made sense to him. This is a set that, and I do it at a lot of the levels where we'll go from kick to swim. We add the swim on the front end, placing a priority on still using your legs at the end of swims. So we add a 50 swim, 150 kick, and drop the interval. 100 swim, 100 kick, drop the interval. 150 swim, 50 kick, drop the interval, and then go to a 200 swim with hopefully that kick still engaged. Definitely with that group going to 200 breaststroke on 3 minutes, we had some breaststroke folks in there that were really good, as long as there was some kick in there. Once we lost the kick, and I knew that set was going to be a challenge for them, that we'd have a lot of kids that didn't necessarily make the intervals. And that's something I do from time to time, no matter what level. If they always make it and there's no challenge, what are we doing? So I always, when I get to work with a different group of kids, or within my own groups that I'm working with, from time to time, I always like to throw that challenge of, and I like to sit back a little bit and look and see, okay, what happens when they do fail a little bit. And I knew there was going to be some failure in that set, and what they did when they failed or didn't make an interval, for a group of 10 to 12-year-olds was real impressive. They fought a little harder. They kept going. There wasn't a lot of excuses or stopping. So, ultimately the result on that set was really good as well. So.
John, that's a good workout, man. I like the fact that I want to first say something that Alexis talked about a couple weeks ago. I like the fact that a senior level coach is getting a chance to work with some age groupers regularly with your silver group. But when you get a chance to work with that gold group, or maybe a group that you don't have, what are some of the things as a head coach, with the overview of the entire program? What are some of the things that you notice that the age group kids in your program at least are doing really, really well?
I'll be perfectly honest. As the head coach, I tend to notice what we're not doing well. I don't know. And we've got so many tools to look at that and how we're doing. Be it like if you pull up virtual club championship, and we are right. And I told, and we have, weekly staff meetings, and we do these little inner squads, and I was really kind of disappointed with times. And this is our newest kids on the team, our 8 and unders. We don't get them sanctioned. We do like a Saturday morning race day for practice, and one of our officials will come in and blow some whistles, kind of teach the kids their backstroke times when I could. And I looked at the virtual club championship backstroke performance, and it was horrible compared to all of our other strokes. It was not good. And that's with, we've got a couple of elite backstrokers, but our backstroke depth and so we had a really good discussion on what are we doing technique wise that's not good, and I think that's a lot of reaching as opposed to rotating, so that they're kind of crossing over that midline. And we talked about a bunch of what we could do on that. But really it boiled down to tempo on backstroke and what can we do from day one with our youngest kids to get our backstroke tempo going better. And that's been an ongoing process, I guess, for about a month now, and we're already sort of starting to see those results. So I think as a head coach, it's almost a little easier for me to identify what we're not doing well. We're doing really well with our kids and racing and race strategy and race preparation. I've got a group of assistant coaches right now that are just energetic, smart, exciting. And I love working with the group of folks that I have right now. And our kids are coming into meets much more prepared in race strategy. Some of that may be listening to Brian Welter. He does a lot of that. Listening to this show. The link to this show is I send out staff notes after the meeting. The link to this show is in there every week. Go learn some more and get some information. So when we were able to get back, and I think the other thing that we've done is just doing things right. When we got back in the water after being out in March and April, we got back in like May 11th. I sort of set a mandate and it didn't matter. The way we were able to do it is we had one outdoor pool that we could utilize basically whenever we wanted. We went from about 6 a.m. till about 8 p.m. We were limited to groups of 10, including the coach. So we had 9 kids and a coach, and we'd start them outside with sort of some activation, ab work for 30 minutes, bring them inside, be in the pool for 30 minutes. And then our older kids would go back out the other side of the pool and do 30 minutes of more hard conditioning, aerobic type dry land activity. But we didn't have a lot of time in the pool, so we made it our priority to do things correctly. We didn't use pace clocks for the first 6 weeks we were back in the water. We didn't do sets. We didn't do intervals. And, from that standpoint, it's I think doing things right with such a priority that we're doing much better. Our underwaters, our streamlines are so much better than they were a year ago. And that's something that I've always wanted. I hate going to a swim meet. And because I do coach our silver group, that means I'm at most of our swim meets and most of our sessions. So I get to see the entire team race, and it kills me if we're getting beat on underwaters, off of walls, or streamlines. And for the last several meets, we've been the team beating other teams, and it's been noticeable. And I enjoy that. That's what we should be doing.
So, John, you're talking about coaching staff relationships and things like that. One of the things you and I have talked a lot about since 2004 when we started working together is the importance of the relationships amongst the coaches, but definitely the importance of the relationship with the head age group coach with the head coach and having an understanding there. You want to talk a little bit about that and sort of kind of how you and I figured that out together, because I think we did a really, really good job of working together for two
Sure.
guys who'd never met each other.
Sure. And right now, because I have 3 sites, 2 of them running, well, I have 3.5 because we went to another city pool because of limited lane space, but generally I have 3 sites. And I don't have a designated head age group coach between those 3 sites. I have site directors, and then I have very coordinated. My coaches at each group level are doing a great job of coordinating. My gold coaches go to lunch almost every Tuesday and talk about what's going on. My senior coach, I've mentioned I do the silver group. The other site that runs full program, my senior coach there is also the silver coach there. So we're talking a lot about what senior and silver are doing. I have some great bronze and beginning competitive coaches that are coordinated and easily overlap and interchange. So I haven't designated a head age group coach because I haven't had that need in our current setup. Since I've been here, I've had one, but the way our staff's working right now, and that's the beauty is I have a staff that is, I don't know that we all think the same, but we all have the same common goal and work really, really well together on getting there. Well, there's been a lot of challenges we've faced, obviously, since March. It's kind of been fun working with these folks to get through them and figure them out because I've just got some great group of people right now. Probably the best ever, and it's why I was happy to come on the show. The relationship Brian and I had in Baton Rouge with the Bengal Tiger Aquatic Club, and I hired Brian and over some folks that had much prettier resumes and probably folks that the board wanted to hire and because they looked a little like neater, cleaner. Really, one of them brought a binder and all these great things, and I said, man, he's really good with binders, but I'm not sure he can coach. And Brian could coach. And Brian came in, and from day one, I told him, I said, I don't ever want yes people working for me. I don't want it. And I told Brian that, and he took me seriously. He'd wandered, and we were, we're training at LSU, and he'd be at one side of the bulkheads, and I'd be on the other, and he'd wander down, and he'd be like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that? That's stupid." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Okay, fair enough. Here's what I'm doing. Here's why I'm doing it." And sometimes I went, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." And sometimes he looked at me, "That's still stupid." And he never once had an issue telling me, "Hey, that's stupid," or "Why are we doing?" or asking me why we're doing this.
And I think the other thing too with us is there was always, I might say that's stupid, but there was always a reason. And when you and I would talk about it, it was never just criticism. It was always constructive, and we always worked together to try to kind of explain our positions and what we were doing on each side. I thought, that was a really healthy part of our relationship, even though at times it did get a bit adversarial, but we always were able to work through that because we, like you said earlier, we had a common goal.
I don't think when you're telling me that's stupid, that I don't ever think I took that stupid as like any sort of personal insult. And it was fully designed to make me think about what I was doing. I love when I have coaches on my staff that cause me to think about what I'm doing. I was talking to one of my assistant coaches today at our little loosen up we did for the older kids, and he's like, "What do you?" And I go, and he just looked at me and goes, "You've probably forgotten more about good swimming than I might ever learn." And I go, "It's quite possible." I go back and look at workouts, and I'm like, why haven't I done that in the last couple of years? And I love when my assistant coaches make me think, make me better. That's what I really want in an assistant coach. I mean, I think probably the best example of our relationship was Grant Grenfell's Hunter Fly. That was sort of the epitome of how perfect we had formed a great relationship. what was he, 10 at the time?
Yep, he was
And
10.
he's swimming 100-meter fly. And it was awesome. It was fast. But he didn't follow the breathing pattern. He floated the turn. He didn't do a streamline. And Brian looks at me, and we're standing on a pool deck. And Brian looks at me, and Brian goes, "Hey, John, that's probably going to be the fastest 10 and under 100 fly in the country this year. It's a heck of an awesome fast swim. When he gets over here, I'm absolutely going to rip him apart because he didn't swim it right, and he needs to learn to do things right. And when he goes over to the warm down pool, I want you to go over there and put him back together. You're gonna need to go fix him because I'm going to rip him apart." And so, Brian being Brian, absolutely, Grant's thinking I just did the greatest swim of my life. I'm going to be number one in the country. And Brian just, lets him know how horrible from a fundamental standpoint that swim was. And I walk over and I walk over to dive well, and Grant, he was pretty upset. And I look at him and I go, "Brian's really excited about that swim. He just would be so much more excited if he'd done it right, because it would have been that much better. And guess what? You someday are going to come up and swim in my senior group. And if you do those things at the level I think you can get to, it's going to cost you big time. It doesn't cost you when you're 10 years old. And that's a great time. It's a great swim. But you know why Brian just yelled at you? No, he hates me. No, he doesn't hate you. He thinks you can be awesome. He thinks you're the greatest kid ever and thinks you can be awesome, but you're not going to get as good as you can if you keep doing those things." And Grant just got this big smile on his face and went, "Oh." I go, and I don't know how many times over the years I've had talks with kids that coach hates me. No, coach doesn't hate you. Coach is challenging you because he thinks you can be good. I always tell my kids, you shouldn't worry if I'm yelling at you. Worry if I'm ignoring you, because then I've kind of given up, right? If I'm on you, that means I got belief and I think you can be better. So, but that was, and all of the coaching I've done over the years, having an assistant coach who had the perspective of, man, that was an amazing fast time, but I got to fix this kid right now. And to bring me in to make sure it got fixed right, to have an assistant coach have that perspective, that was awesome. And for us to work together that way, that was just outstanding. And I always look for those relationships with my assistant coaches. Brian sort of set the bar, but over the years, I've been able to replicate that fairly well. And we don't always agree. We always end up at a good place.
Well, I think that goes. I think that goes with other coaches too, because I can tell you, like, after I went to Nashville, when Tyler and I and Cheryl were on the pool deck together, we were all perfectly willing to work and help reinforce whatever, if Tyler was trying to get a kid to do something and I could see the kid was struggling to understand it, I would feel free to jump in and reinforce whatever Tyler was doing or whatever Cheryl was doing. The three of us had a very, very positive relationship, and it created a very competitive relationship amongst our teams, but it was also a very healthy competitive relationship. So I think a lot of that communication is really, really important. Tyler, wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think that John kind of highlighted a part of, competitive swimming that's really challenging from an age group perspective, is that it's hard when you've got that really talented young kid who can just go out there like Grant and throw down a big 100 butterfly long course, and they feel really good about it. But all three of us are looking at it, and John, like you said earlier, all of the things that we left on the table, all the things that we're not doing great that we can improve on. And it's really hard to teach that age group kid. And occasionally you've got to do exactly what you did, Brian. You got to challenge them so that they understand what else is out there. But you do got to build them back up. And that's great that you guys had that relationship where the two of you can do that, because all three of us and everybody out there watching can probably attest to the fact that they've all had that kid who's really, really talented at something, and it comes very naturally to them. But that kid doesn't make the necessary adjustments in an age group. And so when they get to senior level, it's really hard for them, because that's the first time that the failure really has come into play because they've never been forced to do it really, really well. And, fortunate, for shows, for talks and listening to people and relationships. John, Brian and I were on several Zoom calls during quarantine where, it was really a lot of good learning. And John, Casey and Zach and Bradford, your assistants there were on a lot of those Zoom calls with us too. And it's kind of the origin of how this show got started. Was there's a lot of conversation out there for age or for senior coaches, and there's a lot of set sharing and things like that that's out there for senior level athletes. But for age group swimming, there's not a ton of stuff out there yet. So we hope we can continue to bring that. And while I'm talking, I just want to say thanks again to Commit Swimming for sponsoring this show for us, and give them a little a nod for all the things they're doing for the swimming community. For you guys who aren't familiar with Commit, it's a simple, it's an intuitive, a very powerful workout management tool. It's the best on the market right now, and it is designed specifically for swim coaches. So coaches out there, this is a product for you. Go to commitswimming.com. Sign up for your free trial, and you'll be blown away by the improvement in performance and tracking that you see from your team really, really quickly. So back to John, I wanted to ask you a question about your workout, because this was something we talked about during those Zoom calls, and it looked like on your workout there was a very short, quote unquote, warm up period for that group of age groupers, and you guys kind of got right into the mix. Is there, you feel strongly about that for age group swimming? Well, maybe people waste too much time.
Well, so I found out, and like I said, I got a great group of assistant coaches. I'm taking one of my assistant coaches groups, and it's a city facility. So they're only letting the group in at a certain time. And once they let, so the kids all got there, like the kids were there. The entire group was there like 20, 25 minutes before. And we had a high school prep group in the pool before the group I was coaching, and an assistant coach who used to be out with my senior group at my site, who took a different teaching job and couldn't make it out there. So I hadn't seen her in a while. I'm the head coach. I want to try and interact with every kid. I hadn't seen that varsity group in a while because we've just been so separate with all the restrictions. And so I went in the pool because I can, but the kids couldn't. And I looked out, they're doing stretching and activation on their own. They're trained well enough. And this is 10 to 12-year-olds, and they're trained well enough. They do it every day, that they're out there and they're doing activation on their own. So their heart rates are up. They're warm. Some of them were sweating when they walked in the pool. That made me know that we don't need a whole lot. And I don't know how much 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds need to get going at 6 o'clock at night. If they aren't going by that point, I could do warm up all day, but I got an hour and a half practice. I want to get some work done.
I think I was at a swim meet with Terry Mall one day, and we were down in Panama City at a meet, and Terry said, "Hey, Tyler, come here. We were getting ready for 10 and under warm up session, and he said, "Do you know the best warm up for 10 and unders?" And I was like, "Man, this guy's going to give me something. This is going to be great." And Terry goes, "Spray them with a water hose and get them on the blocks." So he just said, "Let them run, let them race, just let them have fun and go."
Yeah, I mean, I talk with my assistant coaches and all the time. I think some of the things that we do with younger kids aren't necessary with younger kids. But I think they're good to teach them what they're going to need to do as they get older and develop more muscle and things along those lines, and get in the proper habits and figure out. I think, if you think about it, when you go to race, I think Terry might be fairly right about what a 10 and under needs for an actual warm up. Spray them with a hose, put them on the blocks, let them go. That's not the case with a 15-year-old, 16-year-old. They're going to need to actually get some warm up, get their heart rate up. They've got more muscle. They're not. They've got an entirely different physical situation. So I don't think it's bad to start a pattern, and I think that allows the kids to figure out this works for me, this doesn't work for me. I'm a big believer in my kids. I want to train my kids so that they don't need me. I want my kids to not need me. I want them to be able to go on a zone team trip or a national junior team trip or whatever team trip where I might not be on. They don't need me. I want them to be able to move up from the silver group to the gold group and have different experience and not have to rely on, well, Coach John did this. Be ready for new experiences and have awareness of who they are and what's good for them. And I think you can start that at a fairly young age.
So I got a pretty good example of something. Everybody looks at me like I'm insane when I talk about it. But I mean, with my age group kids, when we go into the December meet or we go into tags or we go into summer tags, whatever it might be, we do a version of basically a 12 to 15 day taper. Do I think that 11 and 12-year-olds need a 12 to 15 day taper? No. Do we really do what we would do with 11 to 12 year 13, 14-year-olds with what we would do with 15, 16, 17-year-olds? No, it's not nearly as backed off as what, I would do with older kids. But I think that the concept of learning how to rest going into a meet is important. And I think that if you don't prepare them for that 12 days going into the meet to get ready to prepare for the meet and have them build confidence in that, and you've only drop tapered them 3 days going into every single meet when they're age group kids, and then all of a sudden they get up to the senior level and they're 14, 15 and they're tapering for junior nationals and they've only ever done a 3-day rest, it's going to be a disaster unless the kid's just incredibly tough because they haven't ever done it and they don't have confidence in they don't have confidence in their ability to rest because they've been told if you don't do the work, you don't do the work, you're going to get out of shape. And so now we're going to go, okay, never mind, forget all that. Now we're going to rest you for 15 days going into juniors and you're going to be awesome. And they're like, there's no way I'm going to be out of shape. Everything you've taught me is exactly the opposite of that. So I think there's a lot of things that I do that are very much geared towards that idea of we're going to have to learn how to do this. And it's almost easier to teach it on an age group level because the physiology is so much different. They're not going to get out of shape. They're not going to, it doesn't change that much. So I don't know. I think people look at me all the time like, you rest your age group kids 12 days for tags. I'm like, yeah, sort of, I guess. I don't know. And we do. I mean, we trickle down by 3-day cycles. But we still stay up over 4,000. I mean, we never get, and we don't go more than 6,500 during season usually. So it's not like we're dropping off that much. We just do bring them down gradually going in. And we'll switch from a 2-day cycle where we're going, threshold aerobic all the way through the season to a 3-day cycle where we'll go a threshold day and then we'll go 2 basically aerobic days that are more like recovery days. And they know that. Like, so my kids, as soon as we switch to the 3-day cycle, they're like, oh, we're tapering. We got this. But it took a while to get there, especially with distance kids, because distance kids like to do work all the way up to the end. So I don't know. I thought that was a good example.
What's that look like for you guys getting ready for, an age group meet with like your silver group? Are you guys kind of sticking to a normal routine or?
And so my silver group is what I would call extremely developmental.
Okay.
I might, and usually if they get good enough in my silver group, and they're old enough, I might try and move them towards the gold group. Good enough being somewhere near our LSC championship. So I don't have a whole lot of LSC championship type kids in there even. And one thing I probably wanted to say on this show for everybody's benefit that it's maybe a little off the track of your question, but I kind of got put in the position of coaching this developmental side of our program through circumstances sort of beyond everybody's control. But we had a lot of stuff go down. I started coaching it and I found that I really liked it, but I also found there were some kids on our not so elite, our developmental side of the program, the non-elite side of the program, that were pretty good. One of them went 101 in the 100 breaststroke last year in college. I've got one that's 105 in the 100, another girl that's 105. These are girls in 105 in 100 breaststroke. I've had a lot of kids come out of that developmental side of the program that I don't know if, I think we were just, when we were a bigger team and we had more resources, I think we were just kind of putting them over there with whoever, and they were just getting whatever. And I think I'd like to encourage all the coaches out there to, you know, it might not be the fastest 10-year-old, but take a look and see what you can do to help them. Some of those kids that have come out of what I'm coaching have gone on to do some amazing things. So I'm not coaching the really a whole lot of just best kids. So as I'm preparing them for a meet, it's almost like pure age group. We're going to be doing turns, and we're going to make sure we're doing 2-hand touches, and we're going to work on our underwaters. I mean, I do some just pure, like, real developmental age group coaching with our club every day. That's my group. And I think it's good for me as the senior coach because it keeps me in tune and on track with fundamentals. Like, you know, if I get done with a silver practice and I think back to the senior group could be better at that too. And so I like it. It's completely different coaching. It's 100% different coaching what I'm doing with my senior group versus this really basic age group. But yeah, I mean, my meet prep for them is race strategy, because I'm going to have a bunch of 10-year-olds try a 200 free or a 200 IM for the first time. So we'll break it down and how are you going to swim this race? I don't think it does any good to show up at a swim meet and say, here's what you need to do in the 200 IM if you haven't practiced that a few times. You know, if you haven't talked about, trying to relax a little bit on the first 25 up fly, things along those lines. And so my meet prep with my silver group is very much basic. Let's make sure we know how to do the races. Let's make sure we're going to do some turns right. Very basic age group type swimming.
So on that note, John and I have got a funny story about this set, but one of the sets that I started doing when I got to Nashville, just because of the sheer number of kids that I had. I came from Baton Rouge and I had 20 kids in each of my two groups. So maybe 15 of them in each group would go to a meet. So I would have, 15 kids a session, 20 kids a session. So I could spend a bunch of time with each kid and spend a bunch of time talking to them. And I got to Nashville and I had like 70-something kids in one group and like 30-something kids in another group. And I had plenty of assistant coaches and plenty of help, but I found myself saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over to, just one kid after the next one, after the next one, after the next one. And they're just lined up and I'm saying the exact same thing to all of them. And so we started doing a set for the 200 freestyle. And this is the set that I still do. And you go 25 easy speed from a dive. You have a consistent breathing pattern, whatever your breathing pattern is going to be. You go 50 pace plus 1. You go 50 pace minus 1. And then you go 25 all out, hold your breath from the flags under the wall, get your hand on the wall. And we did that set all the time. And we would do it the last 3 weeks going into a meet. And when we got to the meet, hey, 25 350s, a 25. And that's all I'd say. And the kids were like, oh, got it, coach. And they would go and they would swim the 200 freestyle the right way. And I think we won the 200 freestyle at Southeasterns about 5 or 6 seasons in a row with random kids that were just better at swimming the race. They weren't even the best kid in the event necessarily, talent-wise. We were just really good at swimming that race because of that set. And, that's the kind of thing that I've tried to design in practice to make my life easier and to help them get educated on what it is that they need to be doing. So, I'll just throw that out there. But I think that's a great set if the kids do it right. We usually do those on 50 seconds, sometimes a minute when we're getting started. And the only reason I don't do it on like a rest interval is because I like to have them all together and I like to be able to get times on the middle 50s. So anyways, that's an example of a good set that I like to do. I think Go ahead,
Go
Tyler.
ahead, Brian. I was just going to say, like, a set like that, like, what is something that you're trying to, because, you know, Brian and I, we've talked a lot about these staple events for age group swimming, and what, you know, what different coaches think, whether it be 100 IM and 200 free for a good 12 and under, or is it 200 IM and 200 free, and does it progress to 500 free and 400 IM as they get older? But like, what are some of those things in that set that you're looking at teaching for them to be able to be good at the 200 free? And then John, if you'll follow that up, when you talked about first time you're swimming 200 IM, what are some of those things you're looking at for those guys to be good at that event?
I think for me, the biggest thing, I think the hardest thing for age group kids, and I think sometimes we overcoach this the other way too. But I think the hardest thing for age group kids in the 200 free is to learn how to control that first 25. You know, you go to these meets and you watch these kids and they dive in, and the first thing they do is get on the legs and they hold their breath the first 25 because they're all excited, and they just go blasting out. And my kids think that's great, because my kids are like, yeah, we're going to crush that kid on the back half. Like, that kid's going to fall apart. They're going to go into oxygen debt. They're going to get on the legs too soon. We're going to run them down on the back half. I mean, they think it's great, you know. So, and we kind of know, you know, like, even when I was in Nashville, like, we kind of knew which teams did that, you know, which teams the coaches were telling them, get out after it and go be tough. And we really liked racing those kids. You know, that was kind of like our joke, because we wanted to learn how to swim the back half, and we wanted to swim the back half with confidence. And we felt like we had easy speed on the way out because of the amount of speed work we did. So that's kind of what that set's teaching us. And I think, you know, just because we did have a strategy, it gave us a lot of confidence in what we were doing. So I think it helped on a lot of different levels as far as that goes. We rarely, and I think Tyler will attest to this, we rarely got beat on the back on the last 50 of a 200 freestyle. I think it was the same when we were in Baton Rouge. I mean, my kids rarely get beat on the last 50. You got to just be a lot better, because generally we're going to swim the race pretty well. You know, that's kind of what I try to teach them. And I think when you try to teach them that, you also instill confidence in them to where they believe that they can swim the back half. And I think that's probably as important as the training is in a lot of cases. So what do you think about 200 IM, John?
Yeah, so just real quick, I had an idiot boy, one of my favorites ever, go the first 25 of the mile at NCSA's no breath.
Always a good plan.
Big Ed came over at the 350. He goes, man, he looks good. I go, yeah, it's not going to last. There's no way. I can't believe he's gone this far. And this was, I don't know, this was 10 years ago. And I love the kid, and he just wanted to go after it, right? Despite all the training. And so that go after it, I often talk about breathe early, breathe often on a 200.
We do too.
I don't want every stroke, but they should know their breathing pattern. Every 300 free, 200 on the fly, one up, one down. But when I'm teaching these new kids to go do a 200 IM, you know, we'll break it. We'll go 25 at a time, and not on an interval. We'll go 25. I'll walk down the other end of the pool and talk to them about what this next 25 is. And then we'll put it together as 50s, and then we'll put it together 2 100s. But on the fly, I'm just looking for them, and I have 4 basic things on fly that I want to see them doing. And so on the first 25, I want to see them accelerating their finish into the recovery. I don't want to see the hand stopping at the side. And I want them, what I talk about, I talk a lot about swimming downhill, not swimming uphill. Basically getting down, getting your head down, getting your hips up. When I talk about balance, I talk about swimming downhill a bunch. And so the first 25, I really want to see them accelerating in the recovery, which creates a more relaxed recovery and not going uphill, swim downhill. The second 25, I really do want them to start using their legs a little bit more and make sure that their breaths are quick. So those are the sort of, we're looking at a few things to think about on each 25 of the fly. These kids that I'm working with, a 50 fly is hard for them. So when we get to the backstroke, I want to see them come off and do some good underwaters, and I want to see some tempo. And, you know, we're fortunate. We have a lot of the in the water headsets. and I got a like metronome for my phone so I can play tempo through the headsets to them. I do that a lot, and we'll, so I want them to try and go 1.0 because they're little kids, or faster.
John, hey John, what headsets are y'all using? Are y'all using my swim ears, or are you using a different brand?
Kind of. I was fortunate. I have a parent who has really close connections to China where they're all made, and was able to get me we have about 120 across the team. We've had them about a year, so we probably got about 90 left. They say the lifespan's about a year. Some of them are holding up better than others, but the good news is, as spread out as we've been, like with stations and opposite ends of the pool, they've been a huge blessing during our restricted time here. But so I'll get them going tempo and really trying to push the tempo in the backstroke. It's an issue for my senior group, but it's especially an issue, and I'd like to eliminate it as they're learning, is the back to breast turn. Please stop slowing down into the back to breast turn. It's a backstroke finish. Finish like you want to win the race. Get your hand on the wall and get off. We spend a lot of time working pullouts with those new kids trying to 200 IM because they're generally fairly tired after 100 and they want to come straight up for air. So we work some breath control and pullouts. We talk a lot with them as they're first learning to do a 200 IM. Even some of the older kids as they're learning to do a 400 IM, that you've got to get forward on the breaststroke. You can't be up and down, that you've got to drive forward, that you've got to finish your kick, and you've got to get some distance per stroke. And then really about getting on the legs and getting home on the freestyle. And like Brian said, I am also very adamant about that last 12 and a half or so. Put your head down and don't take a breath and finish the race. Get your hand on the wall.
So you were talking about your miler. And I got a good story about one of my girls. It's one of my favorite kids I've ever worked with. She's a really, really smart girl, studious wise, but she's not always the smartest kid when it comes to. But she's very literal. And we're at NCSA juniors. She's 205 in the 200 fly. We're gonna break 2 minutes. I mean, this is a done deal. Like, I've watched her train. And she's notorious for swimming the back half, like negative splitting 200 fly. Like, she was just always negative split, right? Tyler, were you there for this? You might have been standing next to me, but it was me and Gober. And so anyways, she comes over to me and I'm like, okay, hey, you've got to swim the second 50. You cannot wait till the third 50. You've got to go after the second 50. And literally, she's out beautiful. Looks great. She pushes off of the wall for the second 50. She takes 2 strokes, and I know Gober was standing next to me, and I think Karaya was probably standing there, and Tyler, you might have been standing there too. And I just looked at Gober and I go, yeah, I screwed this one up. And he's like, what? And I go, I'm telling you, I screwed this one up. And she just takes off on the second 50, did exactly what I told her, and crashed and burned and went 205. And this girl has never been slower than 30, 31, or 32 on a 50 fly in a meet ever. And she was like 34.7 on the last 50 because she did exactly what I told her. I just didn't say it the way it needed to be said. I knew what I meant. I just didn't explain it to her the way she knew what I meant. And that's one of those.
Important. I think that's important, Brian, is we do screw up sometimes. I did it a couple weeks ago at a U.S. Open. I did it a couple weeks ago at a U.S. Open, and I didn't know. I'm used to coaching this kid, and he's grown, he's matured, and so I asked him to control the first 50 when he probably needed to be a lot more aggressive on the first 50. No, but okay, we both accepted some responsibility. We talked about it, we moved on, and I think that's important for coaches is. You're going to screw up sometimes. Accept some responsibility, work with the kid, both of you get better.
I mean, she came up to me and Gober standing next to me. I just remember Ryan standing there laughing. And she knew him because we had done a lot of meets and stuff together. And I remember him standing there laughing, and she comes up and she's like almost ready to cry. And I'm like, no, that's my fault. You did exactly what I told you to do. that's my fault. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I explained it to her, and she was like, well, that's what you told me to do. I'm like, I got it. And she, and I took responsibility. I was like, that was my mistake. You should have been a lot better. I just took that race away from you because I wasn't careful about how I said what I was trying to say. And I think that's important.
How much?
And I think it's really important with little kids, because little kids will take you really literally. I mean,
Yeah, they will.
I mean, and she was, she wasn't a little kid, but she kind of had that just wind her up and let her go mentality. So
Well, look, guys, we're running up on the hour in just a few minutes. But John, while we have you, I want to ask you before we get done with today's show, what are some of the trends or some of the things that you see happening in swimming over the next few years after coming out of all of this COVID stuff, and what's out there for the teams that they can potentially make use of to be more successful?
I think a lot of people are really enjoying smaller sessions, shorter sessions. With the way we've been running meets, we're limited to somewhere between 100 and 180 people per session in a facility, which is resulting in 2-hour sessions. We've tried in our sport and USA Swimming for a long time with 4-hour rules, things along those lines. And I think if clubs can look at their business model and adapt so that raising funds off a swim meet instead of just running a good swim meet, I think there's a lot of people who really, really like the shorter sessions. I know I do. I think some of the things we've learned, for us personally, our team doing things right. The fact that I knew we had a season that we probably weren't going to get a chance to swim fast until December, that we took May and a good part of June and didn't worry about anything and did some things right. I think being willing to take that time and do some things right, I think that was an important lesson that I learned. I'm always trying to learn, how can we be better? And I think that was a real important lesson. A lot of teams have had shorter training periods where they have to focus more on speed, quality, doing things right. A lot of the reductions in training group size and shorter practices, yet we're still seeing some really, really good swimming. I think that's a huge takeaway is, all right, what are we doing? I think we're being more effective with the time we have in terms of training and what we're doing with that training. So I think those are quickly a few of the takeaways I think that we can all learn from.
I think that, and I just to throw on top of that, I think the other thing that it's going to make everybody reevaluate is how long our breaks are, the duration of our breaks, and how that's going to affect growth and development. Because I mean, I can tell you right now, I was talking to a girl yesterday who she's a fantastic breaststroker, and I think she was 238 when she was 12. She went on COVID break, and she grew 3 inches since tags in March. I mean, she's grown almost 3 inches, and I'm not sure that had we gone back to the pool the week after tags and had gone through that training, I'm not sure we would have seen that much growth. And I think that's something to think about. So I think it's definitely going to make us reevaluate how we take breaks, when we put breaks in, and how long they are. So it's just my 2 cents.
Good stuff, guys. Well, that was awesome. John, thank you, man, for taking time out of your Sunday. I know that it's fewer and far between that we get days off and breaks, but we appreciate you taking time out of your day and sharing some great information with us. And thanks to our friends at Commit Swimming again for bringing you guys holding water. So John, we appreciate it.
Anytime for you too.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. And guys, everybody who knows me knows that I'm not very good at lying. And I tell you right now, Commit Swimming is one of the best things that I've ever used. I've been using it for almost over 3 years now. Our entire staff pretty much uses it, and it is, we wouldn't have brought them on as a sponsor if we didn't believe in this product. And I was a real driving force in trying to do that. And I've got a great relationship with Commit and with all of their people. So I definitely say try it out. If you do, I'm pretty confident you're going to like it. So
yeah, we'd love
thanks to them,
love
and thanks to them. So, got anything else, Tyler? Are we
No, man,
good to wrap this thing up?
Yeah,
go
I think
watch
so.
the
I think
Chiefs beat the Bucks.
there you go. You got some football to watch out there. I think we may be off next week, but we'll be back to you guys in a couple weeks with another great show of Holding Water, brought to you by Commit Swimming. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Join us on the Swim Monkey.
Swim
Swim Monkey.
Monkey TV. On the Monkey.